From translation, Net New English Translation, this 146th day of the year, today we are reading passages Nehemiah chapter 7, verses 1 to 73. After the wall was rebuilt, and I had installed the doors, the gatekeepers, the musicians, and the Levites were appointed. I put my brother Hanani in charge of Jerusalem, along with Hananiah, the commander of the citadel, for he was a faithful man who feared God more than many others. I said to them, the gates of Jerusalem should not be opened until the sun is hot. While the gatekeepers are still on duty, have them shut the doors and bar them. Also appoint residents of Jerusalem to be guards, some at their posts and some near their own homes. Now the city was large and spacious, but there were few people in it, and the houses were not yet rebuilt. So my God gave me the idea to assemble the nobles, the officials, and the ordinary people so they could be registered by family. I found the genealogical record of those who had been the first to return, and this is what I found written in it. These are the people of the province who returned from the captivity of the exiles, whom Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon had carried away captive. They returned to Jerusalem and Judah, each to his own town. They came with Zerubbabel, Jeshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Ramiah, Nahamani, Mordecai, Bilshan, Misperath, Bigvai, Nehum, Baanah, the number of the men of the people of Israel, the descendants of Parosh. 2172 the descendants of Shephatiah, 372 the descendants of Arah, 652 the descendants of Pahath Moab, descendants of Jeshua and Joab, 2818 the descendants of Elam. 254 the descendants of Zattu, 845 the descendants of Zakkai, 760 the descendants of Bani, 642 the descendants of Babai, 623 the descendants of Asgad, 1,222 the descendants of Adonikam, 666 the descendants of Bigvai, 256 the descendants of Adin, 454 the descendants of Ater, descendants of Hezekiah, 98 the descendants of Hashem, 328 the descendants of Bezai, 324 the descendants of Hariph, 112 the descendants of Jibon, 95 the men of Bethlehem and Netophah, 188 the men of Anathoth, 128 the men of Beit Asmaveth, 42 the men of Kiriath Jearim, Kephirah, and Beeroth, 743 the men of Ramah and Jebah, 621 the men of Michmash, 122 the men of Bethel and Ai, 223 the men of the other Nebo, 52 the descendants of Elam, 1,254 the descendants of Harim, 320 the descendants of Lod, Hadid and Ono, 725 the descendants of Jericho, 345 the descendants of Senah, 3630 the priests, the descendants of Jediah, family of Jeshua, 973 the descendants of Immer, 52 the descendants of Pasha, 2427 the descendants of Harim, 1017 the Levites, the descendants of Jeshua, family of Kadmiel, family of Hodva, 74 the singers, the descendants of Asaph, 148 the gatekeepers, the descendants of Shallum, Ater, Talmon, Akub, Hatita and Shobai, 138 the temple servants, the descendants of Zehar, Hassapha, Tabio, the descendants of Keros, Siaha, Padon, the descendants of Lebanah, Hagaba, Shalmai, the descendants of Hanan, Giddel, Gaha, the descendants of Reiah, Rezin, Nekoda, the descendants of Gazam, Uzzah, Pesa, the descendants of Besai, Munim, Nepheshesim, the descendants of Bakbuk, Hakapha, Haha, the descendants of Bazluth, Mehida, Harsha, the descendants of Barkos, Sisra, Tema, the descendants of Neziah, and Hatipha, the descendants of Solomon's servants, the descendants of Sotai, Sophrith, Perida, the descendants of Jala, Darkin, Giddel, the descendants of Shephatiah, Hattil, Pochereth, Hazabaim, and Armi, all the temple servants and the descendants of Solomon's servants. 392 the following came up from Tel Melah, Tel Harsha, Cherub, Adon, and Immer. But they could not prove their ancestral houses or their descent, whether they belonged to Israel, the descendants of Deliah, Tobiah, and Nekoda, 642, and from the priests, the descendants of Hobiah, Hakkoz, and Barzillai, who had married one of the daughters of Barzillai the Gileadite, and was called by that name. These people searched for their family records, but could not find them, so they were considered unclean and excluded from the priesthood. The governor ordered them not to eat the most holy food until a priest could consult the Urim and Thummim. The total number of the assembly was 42,360, besides their 7,337 servants and 245 singers, both men and women, and their 736 horses, 245 mules, 435 camels, and 67 donkeys. Some of the heads of the families contributed to the work. The governor gave to the treasury 1,000 darics of gold, 50 basins, and 530 priestly garments. The rest of the people gave 20,000 darics of gold, 2,000 minas of silver, and 67 priestly garments. The contributions made by the rest of the people totaled 20,000 darics of gold, 2,000 minas of silver, and 67 priestly garments. The priests, the Levites, the gatekeepers, the singers, and some of the people, and the rest of the temple servants, and all Israel lived in their towns.